This is definitely Jake's space. No question about it. You are all Jake's people. So I'm going to start by asking for a show of hands. How many of you in this room think that America has become a completely polarized country? How many of you think that we've split into political and cultural tribes that see the world in radically different ways? And how many of you think that these tribes no longer seem capable of talking to each other? Okay, so not such a big surprise. I say that was the majority of you. And you're in good company. Because frankly, I think it's fair to say that the divided America storyline has become our most sacred political truism. It's one thing that the Democrats and the Republicans can agree on consistently. And it's a story we tell ourselves over and over, almost obsessively. We've got the red states and the blue states. We've got coastal elites versus the middle America. We've got urban immigrants and rural nativists. Well, I don't know about you, but at some point after Trump got elected, the weeks that followed, I got utterly fed up with hearing that story. I mean, not only was it just repetitive and annoying, I got fed up because underneath it, I don't believe it. In fact, I think the divided America myth is a myth. I think that it's something that both Democrats and Republicans rely on and they want us to believe. It's like the mother of all fake news. Might be the divided America storyline. It's like a sort of collective delusion that both political parties have reasons to perpetuate. So I decided to do a social experiment to test my theory, just to test this hunch. I pulled together a core team of a few Democrats and a few Republicans. Many actually are here today. And together we handpicked 20 leaders, people in their 30s and 40s, specifically that age range because they're not baked yet. And we did that. These are proven people. You would know their names. They're the kind of people that we expect to shape the public agenda over the next 20 years. We invited them to spend 3 days off the grid at a rustic retreat in the mountains of Maryland. The list included former Obama White House officials, Republican congressional leadership staff, independent presidential candidates, libertarian technology executives, a Black Lives Matter co-founder, and a Trump administration appointee. In a word, this was a group of people pulled together who would never otherwise be in a room together. Actually, it felt a little bit like an SNL skit was about to happen. So here's the thing. Everybody got invited, but they didn't know who else was going to be there. They were each offered an opportunity to become what I'm calling a loyal antagonist. Let me say that again, loyal antagonist, which we've come to define as a friendship between two people with irreconcilable differences who, for whatever reason, want to have regular conversations with someone from outside of their political tribe. So, not surprisingly, there were a few people that weren't sure they wanted to do this. Do I really want to do this? Who's going to be there? What's the agenda? Because these were people who have literally been burned in the partisan wars in Washington. These are folks with war wounds and scars. And so several of them accepted only after that they had the assurance that their participation would not be disclosed. So what did we do? On the first morning of the retreat, there was some tension. It wasn't so warm. It was a little bit skeptical, and people were a bit reserved, a little cool. And so we started by asking each person to think through the people and events that had guided them to where they are today. What has shaped them, and what has helped them be who they are? And we had them illustrate their talk in a simple drawing that mapped their personal journeys. And you can imagine that there was some pretty interesting pieces of those stories that had some overlap. After that, you could feel a little bit of warmth coming into the room, a little bit of relaxation. We then divided them into small groups to discuss big picture topics like the state of democracy, civic engagement, hyperpartisanship. There was also time for walks, for shared meals, for glasses of wine. That was really important. There was a campfire, literally, and there were s'mores. So on day 2, thanks, Jake, a freak storm came through and left 8 inches of snow. And we literally could not leave the lodge. We were trapped in the lodge. And so if you weren't enjoying yourself, there was nowhere to go now. And then on the 3rd day, something really interesting happened. One of the guys raised his hand and he said, "When are we going to do it?" Which is kind of a great double entendre. So, are we ever going to really discuss the hot issues? And now they were ready. It was time. So we divided the room into left, right, and center and asked everyone to literally show where they stand on issues like immigration, redistricting, entitlements, healthcare. This was the moment where everyone pretty much expected things to get ugly because we're America divided, right? So the tension was definitely back in the room. But then here's what happened. Instead of a shouting match, we witnessed respectful conversations, sustained attention, a willingness to concede a point, and as one participant put it, curiosity instead of judgment. Curiosity instead of judgment. Now let me ask for a second show of hands. Raise your hand if you believe that most people are empathetic. Raise your hand if you think most people have some degree of tolerance for diversity. Raise your hand if you think people are occasionally willing to change their minds. Occasionally is by far the operative word here. And of course you do, because that's who we really are. That's who we are. And so you probably agree that what I saw in the Maryland woods isn't really all that surprising. The surprise was how quickly these leaders cast off their ideological armor, how glad they were to step out of the rigid roles imposed on them by the divided America storyline. It was almost as if this moment had been waiting to happen. Several shared that in many years of working in Washington, this was the first time they had been in a situation that made it possible to talk frankly and openly with folks ideologically different than themselves. One described amazement at how the discussions had unfolded in an atmosphere of grace. So my question to you today is, how did we get to the point where something so basic should seem so exceptional? How did we convince ourselves that we're a nation that can't talk to each other? That everyone on the other side is so irrational, so bigoted, so small-minded, that there's no point in even trying to talk? Can we ever dismantle this myth? So let me be clear, I don't have some romanticized idea about how individual citizens can achieve great things. That's actually not true. I think I do have a romanticized idea that individual citizens can achieve great things. I know that we have way more power than we ever recognize that we use. And so it will be up to us to keep our democracy alive. It will be up to us to keep our democracy alive. Thank you. It is. And I got to tell you, I don't think the mess we're in will be solved by more research. I'm not sure that we need more conferences and panels to diagnose the problem. I think we know what the problem is. And so I'm here today because I'm convinced that people can actually rebuild trust and respect for fellow citizens. But it happens one person, one relationship at a time. There is no substitute for the awkward, exasperating, annoying, unpredictable act of sitting down with an outsider, of listening to their story, of acknowledging their humanity. Today at 4 in room 802, with folks from the retreat who are going to lead a session that will help you see how we can demolish this myth of a divided America. We'll challenge you to see if you can identify anyone in your life who you can honestly describe as a loyal antagonist. You may think you do, but I suspect many of you don't actually have someone that you regularly engage with on the other side. We'll give you the chance, starting today, to take the steps that identify and cultivate your own set of loyal antagonists. And we're going to convince you that at this particular moment in American history, this may be the most radical thing that you can be doing. So many of you know the story of my late son, Jake Brewer. And if so, then you can imagine that I've touched despair. Despair has touched me. But one thing I've learned, and there are many things that I've learned since losing Jake, is that the only way through despair is meaningful action. It means pulling yourself up even when you do not feel like it, and doing it anyway. So, genuinely engaging with people who are politically opposite of you, you may not feel like it. But do it anyway. Put a few stretch marks on your soul, and for the sake of our democracy, do it anyway. Do it. Become a loyal antagonist. And we'll see you at 4 in room 802, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you.